Hey there, everyone. Daryl Lucas here. By now, a lot of you know that Tara Reade, the woman who claimed that Joe Biden had sexually assaulted her while she was working as a staffer in his office, a claim that didn't hold up under even minimal scrutiny, exploded back into the headlines when she announced she was defecting into Russia. The reason? She claimed she doesn't feel safe. Now, I've been waiting for the last few days for some other shoe to drop, because one does not simply pack up and leave for a country with whom Washington does not have an extradition treaty with for some reason. What's she running from? Does she? It simply doesn't add up that she claims she just doesn't feel safe anymore. Indeed, it's very telling that nobody who was platformed over the years, from the Bernier Busters or Chapo or Trap House diehards who did so back in 2020, to the likes of Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene more recently, you would think they'd be screaming bloody murder if they believed something had befallen her. What is it? But inquiring minds certainly want to know. Now, many of my longtime friends know that Reade hit me on a very personal level, because her bogus claims were very similar to how my first wife tried to frame me up. Particularly the fact that they were banking on me with my first wife and Biden with Reade just waving their hands and screaming and screaming about how they were the ones being wronged, rather than actually trying to defend themselves. It's also telling that in both cases, their claims simply didn't hold up under even minimal scrutiny. But through all this, I've had to remind myself that Reade did something many, many, many times more heinous than her bogus claims against Biden. Namely, it emerged during her time in the spotlight that she testified as an expert witness on numerous trials in Monterey County, California, along California's Central Coast, Salinas, Monterey, those areas, and claimed she had a bachelor's degree that she actually didn't have. Which raised the prospect that not only that innocent people had been wrongfully convicted, but at least as heinous, given the nature of domestic violence cases, that manifestly guilty people could have their convictions thrown out. And that really stirred up a lot of anger in me, because there are a few things that make me madder than people who put innocent third parties in harm's way. And that's exactly what this woman did. And she absolutely knew she was doing it too. Not just because of the sheer volume of cases, but because she'd worked with domestic violence survivors back in the Seattle Everett area for some time before making her way to the Central Coast. And one of the cases which she was involved a couple was a murder trial in which two women were accused of trying to burn one of their boyfriends alive when they busted him cheating on her. The boyfriend initially claimed that he'd seen two men run away, but when Reade got on the stand, she claimed that the nature of intimate partner violence was why he mistook the two women for two men. It was on that basis that they were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. That's why I find it really hard to understand how prosecutors didn't think there was enough to rack her up for perjury. But in 2021, when those women were among 3 defendants who had their sentences significantly reduced to deal with prosecutors. One of them got just over 9 years, the other got 10 years. You don't make a plea deal like that unless you're really concerned a judge might throw the the convictions out altogether. It still makes me sick that Reade hasn't answered for what she did here. This woman has no regard, none, for the welfare of domestic violence survivors. If she did, she wouldn't have done what he did on the stand. And I repeat, she knew what she was doing. Not just the sheer volume would have been enough by itself, but when you lie under oath about someone and you bloody well know you're sending them to prison for life, I'm sorry. That woman should have been locked up herself. I know that she might have just gotten a heavy-duty fine, but to my mind, she should have gotten it in the maximum for perjury in California. 4 years. So I'm wondering right now, did she deny somebody else justice? Or put someone else at risk for being denied justice? And that's before we consider the possibility that her claims against Biden were part of a Russian op. I initially didn't buy that idea at first because she was so sloppy about it. But one does not get buddy-buddy with a convicted Russian spy like Maria Butina and openly solicit her help for getting Russian citizenship. Unless there's something else at play. Right? Granted, it's unlikely that this was an op, because of the sloppiness, but the mere prospect that this woman was involved in another Russian attempt to hack the election is such that it has to be investigated. But for now, file this under unlikely, but can't be ruled out. But for now, anyway, Reade's legacy ought to be that she is a perjurer. Yes, a perjurer. As somebody who grew up politically during the Clinton years, I'm somewhat mystified that a lot of people on the left and the right platformed Reade when she engaged in conduct that met the real world stand for perjury, and yet they're willing to lynch Bill Clinton for making misleading and false statements that had no bearing whatsoever on Whitewater. If you think anyone was willing to essentially lynch Clinton and give Tara Reade a pass is blinded by partisanship. As we longtime Cossacks like to say sometimes, it's okay if you're a Republican, or in this case, someone who was out to derail Trump from making America great again. But for now, anyway, Reade's legacy ought to be that she is a perjurer, one with no regard for anyone except herself. That is all.